Do you like it spicy? Because today we're making fermented hot sauce. Thanks for joining us today on Better Terra. I'm Josh, and today we're going to spice it up and make fermented hot sauce. Now, we've done this video before. I'm going to show a different method of doing the fermentation, and I'm hoping to get a much different result than before. This video will take a little time to complete because after this first process, it'll sit in the crock for 3 weeks during fermentation, and then we'll come back and we'll go over the next piece of the process. First up, a tumbler and a couple slices of dehydrated orange. A nice piece of ice, and 2 ounces of good quality bourbon. I couldn't have planned that better. And I know what you're thinking. This isn't a hot sauce recipe. And you're right. Because to make hot sauce, you got to have a little drink to go with it. And this is my take on an old-fashioned when you don't have fresh orange. So we have some dehydrated orange. I'm going in with about a half an ounce simple syrup. I'm going to go 1 dash of orange bitters. Call it 2. And then 3 to 4 good dashes of good Ango bitters. And then a stir to get everything together. So these oranges and this one wants to hang out. We dehydrated last summer. They add a really nice baking note to the old fashioned. Perfect. So now that we have our nice drink, let's get this moved out of the way. Now with my tasty beverage, let's move on to the hot sauce. So the star of the show here in the fermentation is a good fermentation vessel. And this is a 3-gallon stoneware crock. This thing is antique. It's been in the family for a long time. And we have some stone weights that will go on top of our pepper. And this is a shower cap. I ordered about 100 of these for a couple of dollars on Amazon, and they fit perfectly over the crock. During the fermentation process down in the basement, this just makes sure that there's no dust or debris or anything else that gets in during the process. So we'll set these aside. And then let's talk about the peppers that we have. Now these are last year's peppers that have been in the freezer. I have 2 and a smidge gallon bags of peppers. And these are from the garden. These are red Hungarian paprika peppers, datil peppers, the yellow ones, or orange, and ripe jalapenos, the other red ones. I chose to freeze these and do this fermentation process as an experiment in the process of making a pepper mash. The last episode, I'll put a link down in the description. We rough chopped all of our peppers and added them to the crock, and then added our salt brine on top. I want to change that process and make a mash out of the peppers, and then add a salt brine to it So there's more surface area for the lactobacilli to come in contact with. The process of fermentation with vegetables, during the fermentation process, the bacteria, lactobacilli, consume the sugars in your fruit or your vegetable that you're fermenting, create lactic acid and carbon dioxide. So with our shower cap, it'll allow gases to pass, but not really allow much to go back in. And I'm also hoping that the CO2 buildup on top of the mash will prevent other nasties from growing, molds and other bad bacterias. So what we're going to do to start with here is we're going to go ahead and start our salt brine so it has enough time to dissolve. And I'm going to reach in the drawer here and pull out my scale. So in here in the pitcher I have 2 quarts of water. And the calculation is per 1 quart of water, 1 ounce of non-iodized salt. So I have kosher salt here. I'm going to zero out my scale. And since I have 2 quarts of water, just to be on the safe side, I want 2 ounces of kosher salt. Or in this case, 2.4. Hold on. I'm going to add some to my salt cellar here to bring it down. 2 ounces on the nose. 2 quarts of water, 2 ounces of salt. What's the calculation? 1 quart of water, 1 ounce of salt equals 3% salt solution. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a stir and get it on the route to dissolving. And we'll let that sit over here for a bit. We'll give it a stir every now and then. We're done with the scale. Let's move on to the next step. Let's make a mash out of these peppers. And I'm going to employ my food processor. Now you can mash these down or you can do it in a food processor. Just make sure it's rough, don't puree. And to protect myself a little bit, I'm going to put on some gloves. Because later on I will, for sure, rub my eye, touch my nose or something, and then regret it for a while. So I'm going to do this in batches in the food processor here. I'll probably have to move over a little bit because my cord won't reach. So I'm going to put them in a little bit at a time, make the mash, transfer it into the crock. And I've already rinsed this out. It's clean, ready to go. So I'll start by going, I don't know, about 3/4 of the way full. Got some juices coming out there. We don't want those to escape. We want to make sure that we save all of the juices. Let me move my beverage out of the way. And on the food processor, just pulse. And you can see we reduced down a lot. A lot of seeds. We want seeds and all. So I'm going to do this several more times and I'll come back. You don't need to watch this a whole bunch of times. All right. That's the last batch. We'll add that to sink, get that cleaned up later. And I'll tell you, it's already quite spicy in the house. Go ahead and take off my gloves because I'm already wanting to rub my nose. And our salt is still dissolving a bit. Now, the 3-gallon vessel is quite generous. We probably could have done with a 1 or a 2-gallon. And I have them. I have quite a collection from the 3-gallon, a 10-gallon, a 3-gallon. This is the 2-gallon. I thought this was the 3. The 3-gallon is there. I'm looking at it. It has a plant in it right now. In the other room, there's another size, maybe a 4-gallon. And then I have a couple of smaller, like 1 gallon and a quart size. All of these handed down from the family. So this could have been a smaller vessel. Probably a 1 gallon would have been fine. But my weights don't fit in the 1 gallon. They fit in the 2-gallon. So let me give you a shot here of how much we have inside. This is the other view there. So still quite a bit of room. That's fine. The next thing I'm going to add is a starting culture. And normally this isn't necessary because the vegetables have the bacteria on them already, straight from the garden, straight from the store. But what I don't know is how it survives in the freezer for a long period of time. So if you add this and there's already bacteria, it's not going to hurt anything. And one of these packets is for a 1 gallon sized amount of vegetables. So we're good here. I'm just going to sprinkle this on the top. I'll add a link to these in the description if you're going to do fermented eggs, and I insist you do fermented eggs. You need this because a hard-boiled egg doesn't have the correct bacteria on it. Rub my nose again. Where was I? We have the mash. We have the culture starter. And looks like we're pretty much dissolved here on our brine solution. And I would just want to make sure that this is kind of level and even. There we go, and I'll give it a rinse here. It's all going into the same place. Not all of this will go in here. Let me talk about the peppers real quick. So the datil pepper, D-A-T-I-L, is a habanero level of spice, but it has more of a fruity flavor where the habanero has kind of a floral. The Hungarian paprika pepper, I got those seeds in Budapest. They're a mild pepper. It has a little bit of a kick. You can eat them by themselves, but they have a little bit of a smokiness behind them, and they're delicious. They're about a medium-sized pepper. And then the jalapenos that I left on the vine until they turned red. That's their ripe state. A green jalapeno isn't completely ripe. So whenever a jalapeno is ripe, it's red. And it has a much different flavor profile than the green jalapeno. It still is spicy, but it has a little bit of a sweetness to it also. So those are the 3 peppers that are in this concoction. The one in the previous video was mostly jalapenos, some sweet bells, I think, just stuff out of the garden, some cayennes, and a lot of garlic. So that was a garlic pepper sauce, and was great, is great. I still have several downstairs stored in the basement. I've shared it with many people, but I think I made 15 woozy bottles. I still probably have 6 in the basement, and I've gone through 1 or 2 in a year in the fridge because I have a lot of hot sauce. I have family members that are hot sauce makers also, and I'm trying to live up to the same standard. We'll see how this turns out. Move, kitten. No. Okay. So, mash, brine, we're going to add the weights right on top of the mash and mash it down a little bit. Listen, I don't think you want in there with the peppers. Get down. Beat it. Kittens. All right. So I'm going to add brine until it's just midway up on the weights. And I'm going to add some, let it sit for a little while, maybe give it a little mix around the weights and let it settle down into the mash. Now the mash had a lot of its own liquid, and with the salt in contact will bring out more liquid. So that's why I'm only saying about halfway up on the weights. Now, looking down inside there, we used, I don't know, maybe half a quart or less of the brine, so I made more than we needed. There's a lot of seeds and things that are floating to the top. This is fine. But what the liquid brine does, or I'm hoping that it will do, is since it's above the mash, it's going to create a buffer and protect the mash from any kind of molds that may grow, since it will be in contact with some oxygen. And I'm hoping that this will limit the amount of oxygen even more. Kind of a makeshift airlock here it'll push out CO2 during the fermentation process, but it won't really let much back in. CO2 is heavier than oxygen, so it will hopefully stay below the rim here and create a safe environment. And that's really it for this phase of the process. I will move this down to the basement, set it on the shelf, and start a 3-week timer. Hey Google, can you set a 3-week timer?
Second timer for 3 weeks, starting now.
3 weeks. Here we go.
3 weeks later.
And we're back. It's been 22 days since we put our pepper mash in the basement for fermentation. And until today, moving it back upstairs is the first time that I moved it. The most I ever messed with it was just pulling back the cover, giving it a smell. The smell is great. In the very beginning, it was still peppery, like I would get some capsaicin burn in my nose when I would smell it. Now it has a bite to the smell, almost like if you were smelling vinegar. But it's not vinegar, it's the lactic acid that is built up from the lacto-fermentation process. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to take the top off, which is just a shower cap. I'm going to go ahead and throw that away. And look around. It looks quite clean. I'm going to take a paper towel. And in my sink here, I've put a little sanitizing fluid. This will be for sanitizing bottles in a second. It's not necessarily necessary, but I like to take the extra step. It's the same kind of sanitizer you would use if you're a home brewer or if you make wine at home. I'm just going to give the inside a wipe because some of the bits that stayed in there, they weren't protected excuse me, they weren't protected by the lactic acid process. So I just want to make sure that the sides and the bits that were stuck to the sides, see, we have some collection there. Now, I'm not going all the way to the liquid, but pretty close. There we go. That's just me being extra cautious. I'll show you here what we look like inside. Pretty nice. Oop, let me not shadow it. It has a very opaque color now, where before we just put in, like a clear salt solution. So much so as you can't even see the weights that are in there, and they're only a little bit below the surface. So what we're going to do is go ahead and pull those weights out. And I got a glove on here because just, again, being safe, I don't want to rub my eyes later on. Shake off some of the bits. This one's got some bits that don't want to shake off. Well, it looks like I'm going to touch it with my fingers anyway. Just trying to scrape off the pepper bits. All right, and we'll put these over here in the sink to give them a rinse here in a little bit. So, I'm going to try something new. What I would normally do is just put this in the food processor or a blender, but we don't have a high-speed blender like a Ninja or Vitamix or anything. So, I think I'm just going to use an immersion blender and blend it straight in here. It's going to have to get blended at some point, so might as well do it in the fermentation vessel. I'm going to remove out some of the liquid to retain for later on. So I'm just going to use a measuring cup and dip it and try to leave as much solids as possible. There's only a little bit floating, so getting a few solids isn't going to ruin the process. Now, I have a pH measuring instrument, but for the life of me, I couldn't find it. So, having done fermentations several times, the smell alone is a good indicator that we are certainly in the safe zone for storing. So, that's a good amount retained. So we're going to go ahead and mix this up, and we wanted to get it as smooth as possible. Get a little closer here. Here we go. So far, this looks like it's working really well. All right, so at this point, I'm going to experiment with a taste. Very small taste. Step one in making hot sauce, is it hot? Yes, it is. But this point still has a lot of seeds in it, which we're going to get to next. I need a little bit more liquid in the mixing process here. It's almost like a paste. So I'm going to add some apple cider vinegar. This is really good apple cider vinegar. This still has the mother in it, so it's organic. It doesn't have any preservatives in it. I am going to measure this. And I think I'm going to start with about 1/4 cup. And this apple cider vinegar still has a lot of apple smell to it, which is great. This will really develop the flavors. I was trying to get a taste for salt too. Does it need more salt? But that's hard when you don't have enough to coat your tongue, and it's honestly pretty spicy, so I don't want a lot to coat my tongue. But we're going to start here with the cider vinegar, and as we go, we may be able to see if we need more salt. But remember, we added salt brine. That's how the process was started. I'm going to go with another 1/4 cup, which that's a total of 4 ounces. And then if I add any more liquid, I think it's going to be from the brine itself. Still pretty thick. So I'm going to add 1/2 cup of the brine. I'm going to try to taste just the brine and see where we're at with saltiness. Hopefully it won't set me on fire. That's honestly really nice. Has a little bit of heat, but not. The lactic acid is sharp, but it has a nice, mellow, almost sweet backing to it. It's really great. I'm gonna get rid of my cat. Dust off works. So, I like this a lot. I can taste that a little more salt would be okay. So I'm just going with kosher salt here. That's about a teaspoon. I'm gonna go with 2 teaspoons. And about 1/2 cup of the brine to bring the consistency around. It's still very paste-like. And every fermentation is going to be different. So incrementally add back liquid to get the consistency right. I'm going to go another 1/2 cup of brine. That brine flavor is really, really, really great. And if you can see, I'm almost back to just adding all of my brine in. But I don't want it to be too thin also. Just going to go ahead and go with the rest of the brine. I don't know. Well, it acts like it wants to do something, but it doesn't. It's great. This is maybe the 3rd time I've used this. So the KitchenAid immersion blender is good for about 3 uses. Good news is we're at a good consistency. It wants to, it acts like it wants to go. It spins a little bit, but then nothing. So, I don't know. Hard to find good help these days. Put that over there in our rinse pile. Put this over here in the take to the dump pile. All right. Frustrating. So any more blending, if we need to do it, will be done in the in our Ninja food processor. So, you know what, just for good measure, I'm going to put another quarter cup because it is still a little pasty. I'm afraid in the woozy bottles it won't be enough to shake out. So this is all up to your own personal preference. So let's talk about the next step. So we mixed and mixed and mixed there. We burn up our immersion blender, but we still have a lot of seeds, and there's probably some cores and some maybe a stem or two made its way. Now we want to get rid of those. So I have a pretty heavy duty food strainer here, but it doesn't have to be this. You could use, make some noise. You could use something like this and push it through. This may be a little bit fine. There's devices, and I'll put a link in the description of food mills. You put your stuff in there and you turn it in, it pushes it through a screen. I already had a meat grinder, which is what this main attachment is, and then the food strainer is an attachment or a juicer. So I got this primarily for doing tomato sauce. So we're going to go ahead and get this plugged in, and then we're going to put everything through so it'll separate solids from liquids. So we still have power, which is something. Let's get a something to catch liquids. Let's get something bigger. That should be enough, and we'll use this to catch solids. And then let me move some stuff out of the way here so you can see what the heck is going on. Turn it here. So, in goes everything. It pushes it through this cone that has varying diameters of holes. We'll get juice and pulp, and we'll hopefully push out skins and seeds. And we're gonna transfer it and probably make a gigantic mess because, you know, that's how we roll. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip it with a measuring cup and then pour it in the top while it's running, and we should see magic. Here you can kind of see the consistency where that we're at now. And then I'll get an up close of this so that you can see what's going on here. Like a charm. Got solids, and you can see that it's mostly seeds. And here, beautiful. This is my first time using it for the hot sauce application. And I'll tell you, I am quite pleased with what I'm seeing. This dry seed and skin material coming out. I'm gonna get a spatula. This is beautifully one of the disadvantages of crockware is that they're heavy and hard to hold over. Completely blocking the camera here. But just know that I'm scraping everything in. Yeah, we got it all. And that's it. I took the time while it was running to do some dishes, do some light cleanup. And I'm just going to go ahead and scrape down the chute here. Make some noise. So here's our solids, and I'm gonna the seeds are gonna be, sometimes I would run this through twice, but I don't think I would maybe get like another tablespoon. These are pretty dry as they are. So we're just gonna go ahead and set those to the side. If you happen to do this, don't put that in your compost. You'll grow more peppers probably. I don't know if the fermentation process is enough to kill them, but that's just a bowl of seeds from several different pepper plants. So that's safe to just put in the garbage. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna tip this up so it doesn't drip. Move it out of the way. Is these are gallon bowls. We got almost a gallon of hot sauce here. And I'm gonna brave another taste after it's been through this process and squeezed everything out. The consistency is perfect. So here we go. I don't know where to put that. It's good. I'm trying to think if it needs more salt or not. We still have one more step that's going to develop the flavors a little bit more. And take one more bite. It's still hot. It's not as hot as with all the solids. It's got a sweetness and a tang that is quite nice. And I'm getting a little bit of a sweat going. So the next step is we're going to heat this on the stove, and this is going to help stop the fermentation process. There's still sugars in here. It's still in a slow fermentation. But once we put that in the bottles, we want to stop that. So putting it on heat, bringing it up to temperature to a low simmer for probably about 5 minutes is enough to stop that fermentation. And I think that develops the flavor more too, because it heats up the peppers, it brings in the salt we put in, it develops the vinegar a little bit. So I'm going to transfer it over to the stove and bring it to a low simmer. Get my spatula because we don't want to miss any of this. This is an omelet turning spatula, and I have not ever found anything that's better than scraping down the sides than this, because it has these like long flappy part. Medium high until it comes to a simmer. All right, so we've just came to a simmer. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. Alexa, set a timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, starting now.
While I was waiting, I started taking my bottles out of the box, and for some reason these bottles sometimes come with the caps in a bag, and sometimes they come with caps on. So I was removing caps, and the little shaker plunger there, and I just have them soaking in some sanitizer. It only takes 5 minutes, they say, for those to be sanitized. They've been in there easily that long. I'm going to start transferring the bottles to the sink and getting them submerged. It's been 5 minutes. We've been at a nice simmer. The smell is fantastic. I would probably have the fan on normally, but it's a lot of background noise for the camera. So it smells a little spicy in here. Consistency's still good. I added a touch of water because it was starting to thicken up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat. And of course, we're gonna have to let this cool down before we can handle it and start getting it into bottles. The bottles are in the sanitizer solution. And now for the cool down process, I'm gonna let the bottles just drip, drain dry on a rack. To help speed up the cooling, I submerged the pot in some cold water in the sink, just giving it a stir. You can see it's steaming a lot, so it's giving off a lot of its heat right now. Turns out I didn't have a rack to put my bottles in, so I just upended them here in this Tupperware. The sanitizer I used is this Star San. You can use this for sanitizing many things. Glassware is perfect for it. But it's a no-rinse solution. Some of you might see the bubbles. Don't worry about those. It's a no-rinse solution. It's fine. You can use this, like I said, if you're a home brewer. We do cider and we sanitize all of our cider gear with that stuff, and you can leave the bubbles. It doesn't hurt anything. So, still cooling. We're going to bring it down to temperature where we can work with it, and then we'll start transferring to bottles. All right. That took a little while, but we are cooled down to a temperature that we can work with now. So we'll go ahead and remove it from its cooling bath. Sit it here. And I have out 20 bottles. I estimated heavy. It's better to have more bottles than not enough. So I have just a measuring cup here as a catchment for overflow, the bottle, and I have a funnel that fits in here quite nice. I'm going to use my Nessie ladle, move everything close, and I'm going to ladle out a little at a time into the funnel. And I'm going to fill the bottles just to the bottom of the funnel neck. These are 5-ounce bottles. go. Look how pretty the color is. Very nice. So I'll start working through the rest of these until we are complete. All right, and the last little bit, scraping down the sides of the pot. I'm not going to get quite a full bottle, but this is perfect. This is the one that goes in the fridge and gets used at dinner tonight. And let me wash this off my hand. All right. Next part of the process is just like any other canning or preservation process. I'm going to wipe off the tops, put on the shaker top, and put on the cap, and we'll be good to go. Let's see, we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 2/3. Not a bad yield. So I'm just using a damp paper towel to wipe off the tops. Set them aside. So while I'm wiping down here, I'll just go over real quick of the flavor. I did notice that after I had it to simmer for 5 minutes, that it really brought out the smokiness of the Hungarian paprika peppers that I have in here, and that is super duper nice. It changed the flavor profile of the hot sauce a lot. And since we're not going to be able to eat 15 bottles of hot sauce in the near term, these will keep for a long time. Another episode we made fermented garlic hot sauce. I still have probably 6 bottles of that in the basement. It's fine. The acidity level from the lactic acid, the salt, and the acid from the vinegar, this is all within a safe zone of being shelf stable for quite a while. You'll read out there that it'll say probably 18 months, but it's more like a couple of years. If you're not trusting of that, you can keep it in the refrigerator indefinitely, or share it right away. A lot of these will be shared with friends and family. So here I have my shaker tops. Go ahead and do this one. And the cap. Again, make sure your hands are clean. Just snug those tops down. I'm gonna set this one over here because that's the one we're gonna get used first. Nice and snug. Some of these have tops hiding out inside of them. As I'm putting the caps on here, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. If you're not subscribed already, consider subscribing. We do recipes and garden adventures all the time. If you're already subscribed, we really appreciate you watching our episodes. We have a lot of fun doing it, and we want to keep doing it. So until next time, keep on working toward a better Terra, one spicy bite at a time.